Sounds good.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mama Project podcast. I'm so excited about our guest today. If you don't know who this woman is, you probably live under a rock. And I was just telling her that she's super impressive. She is a trailblazer in the pregnancy and postpartum space. She is the creator and founder of Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism certification. She has over 3,000 coaches certified all over the world. And she's also a mom herself of two boys. And she's just an incredible woman and human being. So Brianna Battles, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about who you were before PNPA, before the babies. Like, what were you up to? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was a very driven student athlete most of my life through high school and into college. I played Division I water polo, and then always knew I was really interested in the human body. Like I liked to know, like for me, learning was so rooted in like, how does that apply to real life? So I really enjoyed anatomy and physiology, and I really enjoyed biomechanics. So I got my degree in exercise science and finished out my water polo career. And I wasn't sure exactly what route I wanted to go down. With that degree, it was a lot of like, will you go to PT school or you become a PE teacher or maybe a personal trainer? Entrepreneurship was never on my radar. It wasn't something that was encouraged or taught at all. So I never even saw that as an option. So I got involved in personal training, which evolved into corporate wellness. And I ran a couple different corporate wellness programs at a really like a large pharmaceutical company, and then also at a smaller like electronics company. And so I got a lot of experience working with a variety of humans in a corporate America environment, which was, I mean, it was a pretty good learning experience. And during that time, I also decided to get my master's degree. So I took a job as an assistant coach working in Division I collegiate athletics to try to help pay for my master's degree. But that little side gig ended up turning into a very like all like coaching at the Division I level. It's just no matter like if it's labeled part-time, it's never part-time. It is like your whole life and soul gets drawn into it, and you get really attached to the players and to the cause and to the culture. So I was working in corporate wellness for the first half of the day, and then coaching until late at night, like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I did that for years, and it was just like a constant grind. During that time, I was also I got really involved in triathlon. So I was training for varying distances, from Olympic to a half Ironman. And then I also got involved in CrossFit. So I lived a very go, 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 fast paced lifestyle. And I've always kind of been that way. So eventually that led to having babies. I got married in that time frame too, and had some babies, and then everything kind of changed.
Yeah, I can't wait to. I didn't know that about you about triathlon. I had no idea. I thought you hated all that stuff.
Oh no, I mean, I really like my husband was he wanted to do an Ironman before he turned 30. And so we had
Okay.
like dabbled in a bunch of sprint triathlons, and that was like leaving college athletics where you are like used to training hours upon hours a day. When I first graduated, so like 22, 23, my thought then, even though like I should have kind of known better with my degree, was like, well, I have to replace that workout time with something else that's just
So
as consuming. So like I gravitated into like running because I didn't want to get fat. Like that was my thought process, was like, well, if I'm not swimming constantly and in the gym like 2 hours a day or whatever, like I have to do something that is like burning calories. So I ran a lot, and then the running really got me involved in triathlon, but I hate the bike. So that was always really hard. The swim was really easy. The run, I could just kind of like go autopilot on. I didn't like the bike part, but yeah, I did that. I did a half Ironman with my husband. Like,
wow.
yeah, I thought you knew that.
I don't know if I knew that. I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew you did like a sprint and stuff, but I didn't know you did a half. Were you like one and done? Like that was it?
Yeah,
Is
during
that
that
what
half
you're doing?
Ironman, I was like, this is absolutely as far as I ever want to ride a bike ever again. And I have not been on my bike for that long of a distance since. I've
Yeah.
done a handful of like Olympic distance ones and like some sprints, but
Yeah.
and I used to like really dabble in that. I would do like one or two a year until I found jujitsu. And now
Hmm.
that's like I don't have the
That's
time or interest
interest.
train triath or to do triathlon when I'm training jujitsu, when I'm like also wanting to lift. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, I just know where I need to put my energy.
Yeah. So you're in collegiate athletics the
Mhm.
time you got pregnant with Cade.
Yeah.
You're still.
And
So
corporate
talk.
wellness. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about your that whole experience being pregnant with Cade, working out during that time, your mindset. Like, talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I, again, really just kind of a driven human. I was really involved in CrossFit during that time frame. I had kind of morphed it into like my own version of CrossFit because I've never really enjoyed in a fitness and strength and lifting setting, like having other people determine what my workouts are. I've always really liked to be in control of that. Um, but I was training in a CrossFit environment. I was very much immersed in that culture. And back then, what was celebrated was like, be a badass. If you're really fit during pregnancy, you're going to have an easier labor, easier delivery, and you're going to bounce back a lot faster. So it was a lot of glorification and just like trying to be as badass as possible and like not gain too much weight and keep doing what you've always done. And while there was still like a lot of conservative messaging in the bubble that I kept myself in, which was very CrossFitty and fit mom culture, um, it was just all that dogmatic information. And there was honestly nothing about core, pelvic health, mindset. None of that stuff existed. Like that
Hmm.
was not anywhere. That wasn't on anyone's radar.
And
It
this
wasn't
was
talked about.
2000. This
This
was
is
2000.
2010. Wait, no, this was
No, when you were
2013.
pregnant,
I was like, wait a
13.
minute.
I was
Yeah.
like, no, he's not. I was like, he's
I
not
cannot
that old. No,
I
yeah,
cannot do the math.
2013.
Yeah,
Okay.
2013, 2014 time
Okay.
frame.
Okay.
And
And you worked your whole pregnancy, like,
yeah, I
okay.
was in corporate wellness. So like first half of my day, like 9 to 2 or 9 to 3, I was like working in LA. So I had a pretty crazy commute as well. So my day
Hmm.
started early. I'd go to the gym at 5-ish in the morning. Then I would commute into LA area. I would work and then I would go to and I would go and coach from like 4 to like 8 most nights, and
Hmm.
then I'd go home
Hmm.
at 9. So it was like a hustle all through my pregnancy. But I think when I've obviously had a lot of reflection over the years, and it's like when you've been raised to like you go to school and then you go to practice and you come home and you do your homework and you eat dinner and you go to bed and like you
And
rinse and
you,
and then you go to
you,
college and it's like again this like rinse and repeat cycle of how you go about living your life. And I was just so structured and so routine. In some ways it was good, it kept me out of a lot of trouble, but in other ways it makes you kind of neurotic. So and like no, don't know how to chill, and that's contributed to a lot of my success but also a lot of struggle.
when did you realize that like a schedule like that was not sustainable?
After I had Cade and went to like rock bottom,
Yeah,
realizing
so
I could not do it all.
so talk about your experience because I know you had that mindset like, oh, I'm fit, like I'm just gonna pop this baby out, right? And like I know you
Yeah, and
talked
I was
about.
also like very dogmatic and like I was very like paleo and very, just a natural birth and I will breastfeed and do all of these like very natural minded things, which again is fine, but you also have to like work with the reality that you're dealt. And that was really hard for me because I thought that I had more control than I actually did. And motherhood kind
Mhm.
of like shakes you into realizing like you might have a preference, but you also have to adapt to this new reality. And what your baby presents is just going to be different across every baby that you have. So I kept working up until I had him, and then I had a pretty intense emergency C-section after hours of unmedicated labor, and it was just really traumatic because I just remember feeling like beyond any feelings of like, oh, I'm so excited he's here. I just felt like I had just been punched in the face. Like it just felt like I was really ashamed and embarrassed that my birth went so differently than I thought, that I had like almost publicly like declared I want to have an unmedicated birth and all of these things, and just really kind of dogmatic opinions about what was best and healthy for birth and delivery and this future baby. And then I just got rocked. I got rocked by birth. And it was just like a struggle. Like nursing was really hard for us. And I just felt like there was nothing I could do to like help him. So I just felt like I'm already failing as a mom because he cries. I can't feed him. I couldn't birth him. Like I couldn't do anything. So I just felt like for the first time in my life, like very helpless. Like anything I tried to control, I couldn't. And it just forced me to like really try to, well, I mean, it took a long time to realize that. I kept
I
just trying to push through and push through.
yeah.
Wasn't until, like really everything crumbles that you
Yeah.
adjust your sails a bit.
What was your, I mean, with that kind of a schedule, like what was your maternity leave even like after him?
There wasn't much of a maternity leave. I decided to leave my corporate wellness job.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'll just like keep coaching. It's just part-time. But like I said earlier, there's nothing part-time about collegiate athletics. And um, I didn't, the administration and the coach that I worked with, they said that they were going to be supportive of me as like trying to keep women in coaching and women in collegiate athletics. And that just wasn't really my reality. I felt like there's just a lot of barriers with like what I was told I could do versus just feeling like an inconvenience all the time. Like I had to bring Cade with me. My husband's in law enforcement, like his schedule and sleep schedule and all of that. Like it was on me to take care of Cade, but also
Hmm.
do this quote part-time job where, yeah, you
Yeah.
can bring your baby. And so Cade and I we'd recruit together. We'd go to practices together. I'd be wearing him and coaching. I'd be nursing him. I'd be pumping and breaking down film. And, I had all of these really like young and impressionable 18 to 22-year-olds watching me. I was only a few
Hmm.
years older than them,
Yeah.
honestly. I think I was
Yeah.
27.
Hmm.
And I just was like, I felt this like responsibility to make it look like I'm doing it all. But really, I was struggling so hardcore, and I didn't have support. There was no one that I could like lean into really. Like we didn't have family that lived super close. They weren't far at that point in time, but they weren't like close. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was on an island of trying to figure out how to take care of this baby and still like honor my work and my coaching and this team that I really cared about. But it was just, honestly, it was a shit show. And I tried to like overcompensate in the ways that I knew, which was like, well, I just have to like exercise and that'll help me get my head right. I just need to like get my back into my body and feel more like myself. But that was a slippery slope of like a pretty disastrous attempt at feeling like myself because I was already so stressed that like I mean I lost a ton of weight and I wasn't eating a lot at all just because I was so stressed and doing so much and like I mean I was just depressed and anxious but I
Yeah.
didn't have words for that and back then I had too much of an ego to admit that there was something wrong. Like
Yeah.
I just was like no I'm fine I'm just freaking tired like
Yeah.
baby just is constantly needs to be held or he's crying or he needs to be fed or we need to move.
He was
Like
very needy.
oh, he was so needy. Like, and
Yeah.
frankly, he's 10 now and like it just all makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
Like you have been wired this way since I was in
That's
the
the
labor room.
get.
Yeah. So, it just was like honestly like over a year of just really, really struggling to the point where then Jared and I had a conversation and I was just like, I can't, I can't do this anymore. Like
How long was that into motherhood? Was that
a year.
a year? Yeah.
Yeah, a year of doing the like recruiting, coaching, like travel with this baby who was like not an easy or chill baby. Like if would have been with Chance, totally different experience. But like Cade was
Hmm.
he was just an intense little soul, and so was I. And I feel like we just like kind of fed off of each other. And then we were under like this stressful environment where we didn't have support. Like I didn't
Hmm.
have resources. Not to mention, I was so I was like really obsessed with my body too, because I was like, what the hell? I work out. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, why does my belly button look weird? Like, why abs feel different? Like, and he was a really big baby. I grow large humans. So I just felt like, God, like, my body is ruined looking now. Even though I was so thin, I guess I didn't anticipate the aesthetic changes. And that just sent me down this rabbit hole of like, well, what is wrong with my abs then? And I was so curious, like they have structurally changed. I can feel that, I can see that. but what is this? And there
Yeah.
was whole like
Like what
diastasis
the
recti was not a thing. Everyone just told me like, well, you just have a hernia. Like when I went to the doctor, they're like, well,
hmm
it's just a hernia. And so I thought, well, I guess I just need to have some surgery then to fix a hernia. It's the only way you can do it. And so, I was asked, like, is it okay if I have another baby someday? Like, should I still get this hernia repaired? And they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. So then I ended up having like a hernia repair over like honestly just a diastasis, like just the fascia. So it wasn't even like adhered to anything other than fascia. So I had this surgery, a little over a year postpartum and had just resigned, like all these big changes. And then just really kind of starting to understand there's more to it than this. And
yeah.
what has happened with my body, what has happened with my life. I need to like pause everything and stop being so reactive and like head down driven. And I need to really learn about everything my body's been through the last 2 years.
So it really sounds like your whole identity was just shook after motherhood.
Oh yeah,
Like
big time.
like every aspect of it.
Yeah, I was like, you don't have control.
Like
You don't have
and
control of your
that's
body, of your baby, of your routine, of your career, of like anything that you said you were going to do. Guess what? It's
it's
different now.
it's like I think like driven type A career women, it's really a hard pill to swallow
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah, it was
like,
a hard thing to adjust to for sure when you're like, I'm used to like if I train this way, if I get this degree, if I get this job, if I do this, and this is going to be the
this is the
outcome,
result. Yep.
this is the
hmm
result. And like, that's just not how motherhood works at all, at all in any way. And I think some people learn that right away. Some might learn that when they're parenting like teenagers. I don't know. But like for me, it was like I got slapped in the face right away with
hmm
between like Cade's spirit and just like who I was and like my maturity at that point in time. Like
Yeah.
like I was this super young mom or anything, but I just feel like there was so much maturity that needed to be gained to really know how to like navigate that season in a way that was like actually healthy versus the behavior and patterns that I had always relied on.
So what did the next couple years look like? Because I just want to know the timeline because I know you talk about this a lot, but I'm just like trying to put it all together in my head and just have wanted to ask you all these
Just pull out the
questions. But
whiteboard and
I know
start
I'm
like
like, give me the
drawing.
timeline. But like I guess I know that it took you a while to even think about having a second. Like I know you talk about that a lot, but you started creating the coach course during your pregnancy with Chance, I
In my
believe.
second
So
pregnancy.
when did you realize that there was like a huge gap in this in pregnancy and postpartum fitness and you were like, I need to do something about this? Like when did that like what clicked for
When
you?
I realized like something was up with my abs and no one had an
Okay.
answer, and then I thought that like the hernia surgery was like the answer, and then I realized there's more
But
to it. I know that there's
okay.
more to it than this, and what caused this? Like,
Yeah.
why did this happen? And then I started like instead of just again being so reactive and I got to fix this and I got to fix my body so I can just be back to normal. It was like asking why, like kind of like what went wrong, what contributed, where is there more information? And I just there like wasn't resources and information. But slowly I started to find, and I feel like the depths of the internet and social media a little bit, but hardly even on social media wasn't nearly what it is at all
No,
today.
yeah. Yeah.
And then it just came from like talking with a lot of people. I realized, oh, I should like learn what a pelvic floor physical therapist is. Okay, I'll go to a couple of those. And then it was taking bits and pieces from what they said. None of them were like very like enlightened, so to
Yeah.
speak, in
Yeah.
terms of like what we know
It's
today.
like, yeah.
And so then I realized there's a huge disconnect and disservice happening for female athletes during pregnancy and postpartum. And I just like honestly, it was like this light bulb moment where it's like pre and postnatal information is just it was just so feminine and
Fluffy.
like lame, and
Yes.
it didn't
Yes.
resonate with me at all. And the language, the exercises, none of that. But I was able to extract from some of it, like, okay, there's more. The pre and postnatal industry talks about some of the exercises for these reasons. But what does that mean for female athletes? Well,
Mhm.
that didn't exist. So then I
Yeah.
started to tap into like strength and conditioning brain and
Yeah.
research brain. And then honestly, just like human physiology, like really
Mm-hmm.
trying to connect the dots between what I was learning about core and pelvic health as it relates to like strength conditioning research and like principles that we know there that are like tried and true within strength conditioning. And then looking at like, again, deeper, the why behind it. Well, the why
Mm-hmm.
is like the psychology. Why are we so wired to keep training like this? Because
Mm-hmm.
our choices then influence some of our results, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just about, is this safe for the baby? I was realizing that's a limited scope of information when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to like the ACOG and still honestly
Yeah.
what is put out there for, is exercise safe during pregnancy, or what should we do or not do? It's
Mm-hmm.
all like through the lens of safety, which of course is important, but also what are the implications for the mother? What
Mm-hmm.
does it mean for her body, for her experience, for her training choices, for her interests, whatever it is that she wants to do during pregnancy or postpartum? And then I started realizing, like learning more about the pelvic floor. Like I didn't have any pelvic floor symptoms, but I was starting to get connected with people that were like really struggling, CrossFitters that had a baby and now they're peeing themselves all the time. And then I found out what prolapse was, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this could
Yeah.
happen to people. Like your vagina feels like it's falling out. What the hell? Why have I never heard this? Yet I had a baby get cut out of me. Like I
Yeah.
should,
Yeah.
that should be something we're like kind of briefed on. So then
Yeah.
it's almost like my level of like advocacy and also empathy for my peers like went
Mm-hmm.
really high, because I was realizing there was this group of us, like millennial women who were now starting to have babies, who had always been athletic, who still wanted to keep doing CrossFit or triathlon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they were running into a lot of the same or similar ish issues that I had with like a diastasis. They were experiencing through pelvic health symptoms or
Mm-hmm.
just like misguidance. What do I do? What do I not do? What does this mean? And, we just sort of, a little network just started to grow. I started learning more. In the meantime, I knew I had resigned from collegiate athletics, and I was like, I got to do something though, because I can't just be home with Cade
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Like yes, Jared and I talked about like, well, you can resign and we'll just try to like, we'll try to figure it out. Like we'll try to figure it out. And I just knew that I needed to do something though. I needed to get
Mm-hmm.
out of the house. I wanted to coach. So I started a like small group personal training kind of,
Mm-hmm.
where I begged my neighbor, a former teammate, and one of Jared's friends' wives. I was like, well, you guys just like come, so it seems like I'm doing something. So I coached a couple days a week, and then I started sharing them on like Facebook. And then slowly people started asking me about that. They were curious about some of the things I was talking about, especially for like pregnancy, postpartum, diastasis.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to attract moms because it was like that
Mm-hmm.
9 o'clock,
Yeah.
9:30 time frame. So I realized that as I was trying to learn more about my own body and doing this like crazy behind the scenes, like dot connecting, learning, networking, researching, being mentored, I could start really applying that to my coaching. And that slowly grew
Mm-hmm.
over time. And initially, like the guy I rented space from, he actually felt too bad for me. So he didn't even charge me rent. He just was
He
like,
felt too
I was
bad.
like pathetic. I was like this mom who I was like, I'm learning about my body. I have this baby. I got to do something. I'm losing my freaking mind being at home. I'm coming out of depression. I'm trying to get my shit together. And so he just like let me start coaching there a couple, like 2 hours a week, for free. And like eventually I started paying rent, eventually kind of changed locations. It started
Mm-hmm.
growing. Then I put together a postpartum program. That was like a 6-week postpartum thing, because I realized, well, I could have really concentrated series
Mm-hmm.
and then have that evolve into a ongoing women's strength conditioning class. And that's open to anybody, like
Mm-hmm.
pregnant,
Sure.
postpartum or not. And I ended up doing that for up until
A
COVID.
while.
But
Yeah.
during that time, because I was doing all of this stuff locally, I was getting a lot of questions online where people were like, just tell me like what to do or not do. And I'm like, I don't know.
It's so much
I
more
just
than
got
that,
tired
right?
of like, honestly, like it was writing so many emails that I thought like, there's got to be a better way to like put something out there. So then I created my first online course, and I hardly even knew what an online course was. And I think that was in 2015 or 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I
And that
hired
was just you, or that was like you had PTs, like you network? Because like I don't even know what the first version of the course look like? Because I think I joined
Oh,
for
that
the
wasn't
second.
even coach
That
course
wasn't
wasn't
even
even on the horizon.
okay. So that was just like
Yeah,
a
this was
course, like
yeah, this was like yeah, 25th. I think this is probably 2015. Created like a 1 hour online course, which it was like I think I built it in PowerPoint and I gave it to a like a freelancer and then I had a videographer just come and film me doing different like movement demos. I was like, well, I'll do like 8 to 10 like main movements, squat,
mhm,
deadlift, press, like lunge or whatever,
mhm.
and like cue some of the breath or the positioning things like early on in
Yeah.
this. And it was like, if nothing else, I felt like I had this product where I was like,
Could be like
hey, you
here.
live in Florida, you and I are never
Okay.
going to like really talk, but here's what I would tell you to do and some adjustments to make during pregnancy and postpartum. So I
Yeah.
started selling that and I had no idea what I was doing. And this poor freelancer, I was like, hey, I just like latched myself onto him because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I just feel like this is better than an email. Um, but that kicked off my desire to try to expand what I was doing so it wasn't just local, like there was options for people because then I was also programming for people when they, if they had a baby, they wanted me to write like a program for them. So I was like in
Mhm.
Excel writing programming, like for people kind of all over. I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Like a way where I can maybe sell this or like kind of mass
Mass
produce it. So
produce
then I
it. Yeah.
created a 6 week postpartum program where they could do that where and that was an online program they could purchase it and it was just like a downloadable PDF that I had
Sure.
like someone in my class made it for me because I was like I don't know how to do this shit. So I just was like really freaking
You were
resourceful.
it sounds like it from the beginning. Like
I'm
I
like I
have
have
this
an idea and
brain,
I'm like
but
gonna help.
someone needs to put it on paper. Like I have this brain, but someone
Yes.
so how did you even like when did you think like I need to create a course? Like
For coaches. That one.
yeah, yeah. When did you think like I need this is like bigger than me, it's bigger than my
Yeah.
little
I
niche
don't
in
tell this
California?
story. Yeah, I don't tell this story too often, but um it was supposed to be with two other people, a physical therapist and another coach.
Okay.
And we started creating it. I put a lot of time and effort into like kind of drafting out what I thought each module would look like from a strength and conditioning perspective. The other trainer was like more like holistic, like nutrition, sleep, like kind of all encompassing motherhood. And the physical therapist is someone that I really admired. It helped me a lot and felt really good about going in on this with. And then um, the other trainer had to bow out because she did have another business that she was like really actually starting to get more focus on. And she was like, honestly, like I need to be able to give more to that. And I was like, okay, cool, disappointing, but I still felt like really confident. Like if I'm gonna make curriculum for coaches, like I
It
feel
needs to
like I
be
need to have
legit.
somebody who's
Yeah.
like legit with me, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then um as time went on, the person was basically like, I don't feel comfortable doing this with you, like because of my uh inexperience in the industry, even though I had like done a lot to move the dial. She had always said I was like, that I really understood this stuff, but it was almost like she didn't feel comfortable putting her name behind
Mhm.
a product like that with me attached to
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So then she bowed out, and I was like, "Oh, shit." Also, I had just found out that I was pregnant. So,
Okay.
this, like, big concept of this idea of, like, really so important to, like, educate coaches because there was no
Nothing.
pre
Yeah.
postnatal cert on the market. It was, like, lame ones maybe through certain organizations, but not like it is today. I created
Mhm.
mine, and then everyone else got that idea too, and that seems to
Mhm.
be the trend. But as time went on, I was like, "Well, fuck it. I have this deadline with this baby that's going to be due in August. I got to like hustle to finish this curriculum." And so once again, I went to that videographer freelancer guy and I was like, I gotta build this course. Can you help me do this? I'll create it. I'll
Mhm.
create all the slides. I'll film as many videos as I can. I'll record this audio over. And it was just a really big undertaking. And Cade was 3 at the time.
Mhm.
So it was just a lot of hustle and a lot of like, even if this does nothing, I'll still be
Right.
really proud that I completed a project that feels really important to me, and I've done it on my own terms when basically other people said, "No, thank you," or "You're not good enough." And so
How
that
did
was like,
that yeah, how did I mean, you've talked about imposter syndrome plenty of times on your podcast to us like, did you feel like when they bowed out, you're like, "Well, shit, maybe I'm not qualified to do this. Like, what the
yeah, and
hell?"
because I was straight up told that too. It
Yeah,
wasn't just like a feeling, it was like
yeah,
reinforced by like, "You are not good enough, smart enough, qualified, whatever." Like that was the undertone.
yeah,
And that honestly, I think to answer like the imposter syndrome thing, the way to cure that is to prove them wrong, prove yourself wrong. Say like, "Okay, hold my beer." And
yeah,
like that's like my favorite solution to imposter syndrome is like you're going to figure it out, and now you're going to have a lot more incentive to figure it out because there's always going to be people that doubt you, that question you, that copy you, but like you can't be your own enemy. You
yeah,
can't be
yeah,
you cannot add to those voices and those opinions because there's going to be plenty of them, and that
yeah.
will never go away in business, in creativity, and coaching. There's always going to be like haters and doubters and all of that stuff, but you cannot add to that noise personally.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like you had I had no idea that you had that many basically barriers to entry for that first version of the coach course. So was it just you or did you have other PTs? Because now it's like full of interviews and PTs. Like,
Yeah.
did you have that for the first version? Like, what did that first version look like?
Yeah, because I always knew that, like, I am good at what I'm good at, but I don't know everything. Like, there
Hmm.
needs to be other voices that can kinda complement the scope that coaches need to know, and so I did
Hmm.
bring in other people,
And how
as,
did
like
you find those people?
at that point in time, I had been really well networked,
Okay.
online, and,
Okay.
I'd grown a lot, like, my name was getting out there, my programs had gotten out there, there was a lot more, in some ways, like, credibility and networking that had been established. But it was like a small handful of people that were just like doing the thing back then. And then like God, and then we moved, and then I found out my mom was moving out of state. So it's like there was so much that happened around the time that like I launched the coach course. It was also like, and we're moving, and your mom's not going to be around for like, um, like
Yeah.
chances, like baby years. So it was a really stressful time in like my personal life, but also in like my professional pursuits.
How did you where is this question? Yeah, how did you balance like building that while raising a baby without the support that you had? Like the
Yeah.
time, like it's so different when you're a mom and it's like you're working before they wake up or naps or whatever. Like how, I mean, you obviously didn't let that stop you. If anything, it sounds like you let the deadline of being due with chance fuel you to finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in that point in time, my kid was 3, so he was going to preschool a couple days a week, and so I
Okay.
really took advantage of that time when he was there, and I would work during nap time too. So like
Mhm.
anytime he'd go down for 2 hours or whatever, like then I would be working, and I would
Mhm.
make sure that like we do that. And then, back then, I don't know if this is even still on, but Paw Patrol, I feel like saved me because I had to like knock out stuff, and then that cartoon, like I would just put that on, and I was like, okay, I need like 30 more minutes, and he was finally like chill enough to watch a cartoon, so I would put that on for him. Um, I think moms are really good at becoming resourceful, and it's really tempted to be committed to our own struggle. So
Mhm.
I know there could have been this is where athlete brain really served me during this season was like I could have said, "Oh, I can't like, I got a kid doing this or doing that." But I was like, "No, like I need structure. He's going to go to preschool. That means I get my ass home and I do this. I record
Mhm.
because this is when I know I'll have silence in the house. And I can do these other things where maybe I don't need silence, but I can work with him." And anytime I would like let mom guilt creep in, I would say, What's the
This is
alternative?
bigger.
Going back to
Yeah.
collegiate athletics where you had no support and you were like losing your mind and you weren't happy, like that wasn't healthy for him either. So it was
Mhm.
better that like I was maybe not fully present, but present enough and still really involved. Like we didn't have childcare, so it was just me and it was on me to
Mhm.
figure it out. So
Yeah.
um I don't know. I just feel like we are moms are so resourceful, and I think we often like guilt ourselves and like, well, I can't, like I'm ignoring my baby, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. But like you still matter, your work still matters, and your motherhood matters.
100%.
It all
It all
matters.
matters.
And like you just
100%.
have to like shift it around at different times for different reasons.
Mhm. So I'm curious of this. What process or like steps did you have to take for your certification to be like a nationally accredited certification?
Well, the night I launched it, I was like, and like, what's funny is I didn't have an email list. I didn't have like the a structure of an online business at this point in time. So this was 2017.
You literally just like wrote a Facebook post or
A
something?
Facebook post, and I said it
Yeah.
was like I made a thing, like that cringe, like sentiment.
I
I'm
did a
at
thing.
like this certification, or
Yeah.
I don't even know if like back then I don't even think we could call it a certification. Like we were just calling it like like a online course.
Hmm.
But then eventually, in order to get CEUs, it needed to be a certification.
How
So,
many
and
people
then
signed up for that first course? Do you remember?
a lot. I made, and what's crazy in this like entrepreneurial journey is like in collegiate athletics, you get paid like nothing. It's like it's almost
Like
insulting.
laughable. Yeah.
Yeah, like less than minimum wage,
Sure.
like when you
Hmm.
really break
For the
down what your
time.
salary is
Hmm.
versus the hours. And like you do it because like, oh, we love it. And like coaching, it's like I'm so called for it. But like I was doing so much for so little. And in that first night of launching it, I made more than I did the entire year coaching collegiate athletics. And I was like, holy shit, this is a thing. This is totally a
Wow.
thing. And I like I remember I couldn't even like cry and I wasn't happy. I was just more like shocked. I was like, Jared, I can't believe people are buying this. Like
Wow.
I just can't believe people are buying this. I couldn't, and
Hmm.
at that point in time, I had no idea how to price it. Like it
Yeah.
was all so confusing, and I was just like hoping. Like I felt so bad. I was like, God, I feel like I'm charging them. I think it was like $500 back then. There's somewhere around there, and I was like, I just feel so bad. That's so much money, and like but we had people buy it, and like the people that went through that first edition in 2017, we still have so many OG coaches that
Hmm.
are still around, that are still doing this work, that are still supportive of this work. And it was like such a again, like this OG community of people that like really gave a shit. They were like
Hmm.
in the trenches. They were this first generation of like coaches and athletes that are like, yeah, there's a huge disconnect in the pre and
Hmm.
postnatal industry. And
Yeah.
like what you're saying and how you're doing it is different. And I support you.
Hmm.
And like that will always mean so much to me that they saw value before anyone else
And
saw value, before I knew that there was like before I had like validity that there was value. Like I thought it was good, but they trusted me before I had earned that trust in a lot of
hmm.
ways.
When did the steps to get it like nationally accredited like when did you like, oh shit, I have to, like, I don't even know, like how did you
I
do
was just like
that part?
applying for a lot of different like CEU organizations and meeting their
Okay.
standards of what would
Okay.
be what it was required to get CEUs through them or to be networked with them or whatever it might be. But it was a
Okay.
long process, and back then it was just me. Like I didn't have
Yeah.
anyone working for me. I was a one woman show, except for like this, poor guy that I hired as a freelancer who was like,
Do you still is he
"You're
still your
so needy."
freelancer or no?
No,
Like,
I mean, he would
but
be if I like needed some videos or something, but
yeah.
he lives out of state. He's a great guy. His name's Dallin.
Okay.
But but he was like so
He's
good
got to
to me.
be so proud of you and like at what you turned that into. Like he's like, "Holy shit, girl, you're like a
I know.
thing
He's like,
now."
I remember
Like,
those early days where I was like, I don't know the answer to this tech question. Do you? And he's like, sure. I think he just felt so bad for me.
so
Um,
was Heather, so I know like Heather is like your kind of right hand now ish, right? I think.
yeah,
So like
but
when did she was part of the first round of coach course? Is that how you guys met?
yeah,
Okay.
she went through the coach course, and God, and then she was visiting California around the time I'd had chance. So I was like 2 days postpartum, and she was like, I bought the coach course. I'm actually visiting California. And I was like, oh, why don't you you're kind of close to where I am. Like, you should come over. And she was like, what? And then
That's really surprising though of you. Like what I kind of
no
know about
kidding.
you a little bit.
I
Like,
know it's weird. It makes no
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like that's not really my personality. And
Like
so,
I
but in
would
some
totally
ways,
do that. Oh, come over. But
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's very unlike me, but I feel like sometimes like the universe works in like inspiring ways. And I feel like I don't know, that was like a moment where she came over and we hit it off. And I felt so grateful for anyone who invested in me at that point in time. I was like, oh my God, I why wouldn't I invite you over? You just gave me $500. Like I just felt like I don't know. I just felt like really compelled
Mhm.
because in some ways I still felt like this imposture. Like I really wanted to like the I am with you sentiment that I sign off every email on. Like I've been saying that for a long time because that's genuinely how I feel. Is like
Mhm.
have never wanted to do this alone. And I created this so that like we could be doing this because I one voice and one person in one area. We need a lot of me to
Mhm.
change the culture of this industry and the fitness industry and honestly women's health around the world. So I met Heather, but again, she didn't start working with me for years. I had
Mhm.
hired a VA that I stalked in like a entrepreneur mom group. And I just knew I needed the most versatile human possible. And this was right before I had Chance. So I'm like kind of going backwards now.
Mhm.
I knew that I had just launched this coach course. It was way more successful than I anticipated it being. I knew that I kind of wanted to have some form of maternity leave since I was so fucked up after Kate. I didn't know what I was going to be like with Chance. And I like just honestly stalked somebody through a Facebook group, sent her a
Mhm.
message. It was like, hey, like I saw that you're looking for a job and you seem like you'd maybe, be a good fit for me. And then I brought her into my business and she was like, you created an online course and you don't have an email list or an opt-in or like any of these like
Yeah.
basic business
Basically,
fundamentals. And
like,
she's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
yeah,
Well,
it was like,
we gotta like fix things. So it was good because she gave me some guidance from a business perspective of like what I needed. It's almost like then I do this in so many ways. I just like go full send and then work backwards, like, oh yeah, I guess I should have maybe had this in place prior. But no, she was great, and it gave me the opportunity to like have somebody who was in my business a couple hours a week to help with support or to kind of give me guidance on what I could be doing and creating. So that's when I started writing a lot of ebooks when Chance was a newborn because he was a totally different kind of spirit than Cade was. And so I was like, oh, he sleeps. This is so weird. I guess I have this time. Like, all right. So I did a lot of
mhm.
writing when he was a little one.
Mhm.
And
Because you launched the course before he was born, right? The first
yeah,
batch.
like a couple
Okay.
months before he was born.
Okay.
And yeah, that timing, it was a lot going on in a short period of time, but it all sort of like forced the hand, right? It was like, well, you better
Yeah.
finish this course before you have the baby. Well, you should hire somebody so that you can maybe have a maternity leave and not be as neurotic as you were last time. Remember
Mhm.
that? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of different things that forces that came into play that helped with an improved experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So yeah, how was that second experience with Chance? Because I know you talk about this in your podcast. I'll leak it. I'll leak the episode because I think it's very common, and a lot of us share that sentiment with you at our coaches seminar that like we really had a hard time with how it went for us the first time around. And the baby turns one, and everybody's like, okay, so when's the next one? And you're like, I just survived like the hardest year of my life. Like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? So talk a little bit about that. Like how you were like, okay, I can do this again. It's gonna be different. You know what I'm saying? Because you were probably like, holy shit, like what if it's the same?
Yeah.
Right?
I knew that I wanted to have another baby, but I was like, I don't know how I'll survive. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know what this will mean. I've worked so hard on growing this business. I'm so involved in this right now. And I felt like I'd finally grasped like healing my body and improving my diastasis. And I'm like, I'm going to ruin that again. Like, all of this work on getting my body healthier, my brain healthier, starting this business, um, all of these things that had changed. And I didn't even mentally consider having a baby until Kate was 3. And then it was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe. And then I think it was like a few months later that that I got pregnant with him. But it took, there's a 4-year age gap. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
people like gave me shit. They were giving me shit before I got pregnant because they were just like, like you don't want to have them too far apart in age. They won't be close, or it's this or that. Like so many weird opinions around age gaps, and I just don't get it. But there's a 4-year age gap. And during that time period, I knew like I was trying to figure out like would I want to VBAC, would I want to do like a repeat cesarean? And for me, ultimately, I chose to have a repeat cesarean, and I felt like that was something that would give me more control and honestly consolidated trauma. Like I had a C-section prior. I didn't want to like introduce a vaginal birth because now there was like C-section previous trauma and now vaginal birth trauma. That's two. Like I'd rather just have consolidated trauma. So
Mhm.
I chose that. And in talking with, um, again, going down my research rabbit hole, I realized that I could have a gentle cesarean, which for
Mhm.
me, how I felt was more important than how the baby came out. And all I had known about core and pelvic health, I was like, yeah, I will have this baby through a C-section, but I want to feel like it's not a C-section. I want the environment of what I had desired with this natural birth. So with a gentle cesarean, you can request to have music in the OR, you can request to have a clear drape or have the drape dropped, skin to skin, delayed cord clamping, nursing in the OR, like just if you can request that experience, like I knew that that would be healing in a lot of ways because how I would feel would be different, assuming that like all things were pretty straightforward. Well, I realized in talking to my OBGYN, who was awesome, she was like, honestly, we don't have that as our hospital policy. This isn't a thing here. And I brought in research like a freaking nerd. I was like, look, here's like some PubMed articles on gentle cesareans, like their outcomes and like how good this is.
Oh God, I
And
love
I'm
it.
so glad that she didn't like roll her eyes and be like, shut the fuck up, you know? Like, she was like, this is really interesting and this would
Yeah,
really improve like our maternal outcomes and mental health and experience.
yeah,
And so she was like,
absolutely.
you know what? Let's look into this more. I'm going to connect you with the head of labor and delivery and like let's start making some connections. So like you're getting a sense for like how kind of intense I am as a human. But like so then I went to labor and delivery and it was the same hospital I'd had Kate at. And I'm like walking down the hall where I like remember being in excruciating labor, having all this trauma. And I'm just trying to find this nurse, this head of delivery nurse. And I'm just like trying to not have a panic attack. And I don't like crying, you know, like I'm an intense lady. Like I'm not gonna cry. And I find the head of labor and delivery, and she's like the sweetest little human, of course. And I'm like nervous and anxious. And I talked to her the same way that I talked to my doctor about the gentle cesarean. And like as I was going on my like, you know, what I'd prefer or if they'd be open to this, she was just like, tell me about your first birth. Like what? Like I can tell you're, you know, like you're really anxious and you know, and this sounds much more condescending than she sounded. She was like so kind and she was just like, what
Mhm.
happened? Like, let me
Mhm.
know so I can do better. This is my
Mhm.
unit. I want to do better. And I was like, holy shit. Like, what? Like the level of like emotional intelligence and validation was like really apparent. And so I told her like it was just really traumatizing and I'm okay having a C-section again. I just want to feel different. And this is a way that I know I could feel different. If we change how the environment feels, how the support feels, then I know that not just myself, but other people will feel more confident and supported in their birth experience. So she was like, I'm going to make this happen. Like, I'm going to order some clear drapes. I'm going to like work to change hospital policy. And so that we can like work to facilitate this experience for you and for women to come. And I was like,
That's amazing. Look
okay,
at
this is
that.
amazing. And so then I like stayed in contact with her and my doctor through pregnancy. And they gave me updates on officially changing hospital policy. They had clear drapes on hand. They were going to start informing the NICU and labor and delivery and the anesthesiologist of like this new protocol that they were going to test with me. I'm
That's
like, okay.
awesome.
So then I had a chance August 5th, 2017. And honestly, it was awesome. They had the whole team of nurses were so excited and the anesthesiologist, everyone. It was awesome. And I was giant and I had the kindest nurse. And I just felt so loved and supported. And even as like an intense person, it was just like so nice to feel really like held and seen in that environment because I was so like that was just such a traumatizing environment prior. So
Mhm.
you go back in there into the OR and I was just like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really tense and nervous, even though it was a much more controlled experience, non-emergency this time. It was just really, it just felt so good to be supported that way. And
Mhm.
I had the clear drape as they were bringing him out. I was propped up. I couldn't like see myself cut open, but I got like a play by play. And for me, I know that's
Sure.
not everyone's thing, but
Yeah.
like I wanted to know what
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like,
Which
give me a
layer are
play
you
by
on?
play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they like brought him out and they put him on my chest and they like did all his tests and everything on me, but I got to like hold my baby for the first time, and I didn't get that with Cade, so it just felt like
Mhm.
this full circle moment of, like, the environment that was so traumatizing before was so healing this time, and it didn't take having him come out of my vagina for it to be
Mhm.
this healing moment. There
Beautiful.
was a
Yeah.
lot of the, like, dogmatic language out there, which was like, you can only have a redeeming birth after a C-section if you
If
have a
it's a
VBAC,
yeah.
and, like, I just found that so, like, short-sighted, and it felt like a big win in a lot of ways for, like, kind of backing up everything I had said, everything I had hoped, and then creating this realm of possibility for other women who wanted to maybe have that similar experience. And I know it's not for everybody, but if it is
Mhm.
for you, then it was a great way to have a baby come into the world.
And I just think like the messaging that you've spread around like C-section versus vaginal birth, like there's no easy way. Like
No.
sorry, like I would argue the other way because I had a vaginal birth and it took me longer to recover than some of my C-section friends because I tore so bad.
Yeah.
She tore my cervix on the way out. Like who I've never even heard of that being a thing, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like yeah, I love that you share that. And it's almost just kind of like you kind of like practice what you preach, right? In your course, I'm sure.
Yeah. I've been dedicated to that because I think in the fitness industry we often see people that like have really strong opinions, but they don't have that experience. They don't really embody what they're talking about or what they're selling. And I find that so disheartening and inauthentic. And I just like, I find that repelling. So I've never wanted to contribute to that. It's like if I'm putting something out there as like a flag in the ground or a program to sell, you're giving me money. I want you to know that like I freaking get
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Like I can
Yeah.
back it up. I live this.
I
I
do the
practice
work.
this. I
Yeah.
coach this. I am like, I'm truly in it with you, or I have been in it with you, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so it's been a good, I don't know, it's just been a good journey because I can look and say, like, there's evidence for like the stuff I'm talking about. I've lived that. I've done this, we're doing it.
So after Chance, 2017, you went back to training those in-person classes then along with kind of running the coach course?
Yes. Yeah, I had like my online programs and then I was coaching locally in my community and I did that throughout his baby time. And I had,
Mhm.
kids again in preschool or maybe we had started kindergarten somewhere in there or TK. So I just had Chance, which was good because it's like one kid was kind of in school and then I was just down
Mhm.
to the one, which also was a great selling point for that 4 year age gap, at least for my brain.
Mhm.
And we just like made the most of it. Like we really just I had a lot of fun. It was really fun coaching, really fun feeling like I was supported as a mom, that my business was and something that I really loved and enjoyed doing and it complemented how I wanted to be as a mom. Like it wasn't this like all consuming 9 to 5. Um I could do it on my own terms. I coached for like a
Yeah.
couple hours, a couple days a week, and
Yeah.
I could bring him with me. And then I'd get Cade from school, and then we'd go to jujitsu or soccer or whatever kind of thing we had
Mhm.
going on. And just felt it was a really good balance. And then I started to grow the online portion of my business and my team and whatnot.
And that was around COVID times? Like how did COVID impact your business? I guess
Um,
training in person and then the online space.
it's in some ways because I had already been online, it was not as affected. My in-person class was affected during COVID, but I ended up turning that into the Practice Brave Fitness program, which I believe you're
Okay.
doing.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
it's like everything. I feel like you got to like be able to trust the redirects, and I don't know, like it all kind of worked out. I started growing and scaling my team behind the scenes, business coaching. I just knew that for what I wanted to do, for where it was at, I just needed to slowly start investing more. And it's just we talk about like progressively overloading in fitness and in strength, but it's the same thing with business. Like you just kind of add one player at a time who can really
Yeah.
kind of keep taking it to the next level. And now it's kind of like
Now
a
it's like
like a company.
I
It's wild.
know.
A
I
lot of
know.
different humans involved.
I know. And that's just, it's probably like mind boggling to you still to be like, holy shit, like I created this brand. It's not just
Yeah, no,
me.
it's a big thing, and,
Yeah. It's a big
there's a lot
thing.
going on with it, and it's just crazy because it's grown so much and like just really honestly so incrementally over time.
Yeah. And I'm
Almost
sure,
like at the pace that it needed to also
yeah.
because like through all of this, I've been raising babies,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
it grew at the pace that it needed to. And I think some people look at like entrepreneurship as like it's like this like toxic grind or it's like all these fails. And I think if you just freaking pace yourself and respect the season you're in, you just got to play the long
What's
game.
I
You got to play
and
the long game.
and
That's
that's
what it is.
I love that because I'm kind of in that, right? Like that's
Yep.
where I'm at and I'm just like how do I do this new thing with this new human? It's like what the heck? And I think it's overall our society. It's just like the all or nothing. The like I have to have all the time or none of the time. And it's like you said, I mean, as an athlete, that's hard to scale back on workouts, right? You're like, well, if I don't do a 2 hour workout, I mean, does it even count? Like, you
Right.
have to change that perspective and that mind shift
Yeah.
of like, no, 30 minutes is enough, you know?
Yeah, and like and again, it's being able and I can say this easily now because I'm on this other side of it. I don't have like tiny little humans anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They need me in different ways, but it's like my availability has changed so much. Like a 30-minute workout a couple days a week was like that had to be good enough
Mm-hmm.
back then. That was
Yes.
the trenches
Yeah.
of growing a business, the trenches of like having little kids and limited work windows or whatever, where like I couldn't always do the kind of workout I wanted to do. I was always working out, but maybe it wasn't what I wanted. And now I'm like, God, I've been able to discover a whole new sport and I have more
Yeah.
time.
Because you
I
have the
can
time.
I can do this because I'm not like limited to like when do I need a nurse next? When am I going to preschool pickup? Like there's just longer blocks of time where you're like, oh, I'm not in like absolute survival mode. Maybe my like, 3 to like 8, 9 o'clock at night time frame is just totally owned by
The
children and
kids.
sports.
Yeah. Sure.
But like, yeah, it's just been interesting to see that transition. And you just again, you got to pace yourself with like, this is what this season of life is giving me right now, and it's not forever. But what can I do within this season to move the dial forward?
Yeah. I think that's so important for our type A, high
Yeah,
strung, career driven personality types.
absolutely.
So how does PMPA continue to evolve and change? And like, what are you working on now? Like as a brand, as a team, like
Yeah.
what's next?
I feel really excited about the team I have in place. Everyone is like honestly an A player, really like self motivated and great in their role. So I feel like having that kind of support again, because I think of everything in sports analogies. It's like you can have like a player, but you have to have a team in order to make it like a successful unit
Hmm.
and take it to the next level. So I'm really excited about the team members that I have in place right now. And we're building out PNPA combat so that the MMA world from jujitsu to actually like mixed martial arts, like kind of everybody that realm is supported because we're seeing more female athletes that are choosing to be involved in combat sports and pregnant athletes, postpartum athletes, moms that are in the
Hmm.
UFC. We're seeing more of that with, I mean, and that's a male dominated community. So
Yeah.
just trying to get more resources and support for combat sport athletes. And then Heather and I have started Practice Brave Business so that we know that, I've coached coaches through this certification program. And, we have business support in module 10 of the coach course. But then there's the reality of like, well, how do I implement this? And what does it look
Hmm.
like for me in this season of life? And being able to like help guide coaches in that now what, or what should I do? What makes the most sense for me? Because it can be really overwhelming to like spin your wheels and not actually have clear guidance on what you should do. And it's been
Hmm.
cool for Heather and I to like work with a handful of PNPA coaches and just give them advice on like, well, what's the next right thing? What
Yeah.
does practicing brave look like for you in this
Yeah.
season of
This
what's
season.
manageable and also what's going to move that dial forward so that like you are doing work that feels really rewarding. You are getting paid for that work and you're doing it in a way that complements who you are, what you're good at, and the season of life that you're in. And there's not a lot of business coaching that looks at the whole person like that. So taking a lot of my coaching philosophy mixed in with like the perspective of like, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, and like I get it. Like I
Hmm.
get exactly what you're doing. And you don't see
Yeah.
that a lot in business coaching.
No, because they think, yeah, and
They're a little out of
absolutely.
touch sometimes. Then
Absolutely.
I wanted to make sure that like I do the opposite of that.
Yeah. So what are your, I would say like, what are 3 to 5 of your business core values?
Business core values. Um, well, I have like a lot of like my team core values, but I like, ownership, I think is really important as, coaches being able to take ownership. Um, Authenticity, which I think is overused, but it really is a matter of um embodying what you preach and not just seeing like a business or marketing opportunity, but like truly living it. And like that's how you get buy-in and it becomes obvious. Um, and then just practicing brave. Like that is the core value of this
Hmm.
business. It's not being brave, it's about making small choices over time that lead to living a really brave life, and that will change your life. A series of small choices will truly change your life, and it's very rarely the big ones. It's all the tiny ones that lead to those moments, and I see that come up. That's like a family core value, that's a business core value, and that's like a life core value.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap this up, but I want to do a little I don't know, like a little game, I guess, with you. Not a little game, but a little. I'm gonna give you like four different areas of life, and I want you to tell me, the gold in that and the grief, right? So like the positive and negative, like of each so far, like each of your experiences. Okay. All right.
Golden
So
great.
the first, the gold. Give me the gold and give me the grief. So first is motherhood. You guess like
Mm.
where you're at right now, because I know your kids are older, so you have a little bit of a different perspective, but give me that and your experience so far.
The gold is like seeing them discover their own athleticism and fall in love with sport, fall in love with like learning and competing. And um, it's so rewarding to not be a coach and not be an athlete, but to be a mom supporting my kids. That's the gold.
Okay.
The grief attached with motherhood is just knowing how to like, just like raising really like emotionally intelligent but tough young boys. Like I want it's a hard line to walk sometimes, and especially with a spirited one. We will butt heads all the time, and you just want to make sure you're doing a good job. So, but I think
Yeah.
that's motherhood for all of us.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship.
um, Gold is the impact and like what I see coming to life in communities all over the world, and as well as my team. It's been really cool to like be on a team of all women. And then the grief is just the watered down versions of people copying or like not living, not actually qualified to be selling or sharing or teaching, and it just waters down the work that we're doing.
Hmm. Athleticism.
Gold is finding a new sport in my 30s and competing in it and falling in love with it. I never saw that. I never saw that coming. That's jujitsu. And then the grief is like forever, like battling athlete brain and the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform and do more and harder, faster, more intense. Having it complement our life more.
Last, Idaho.
Idaho gold, man. We've created an awesome community of friends here. I feel so fortunate. Great neighbors, great group of friends, great community that we've just really been welcomed into. And so many people are not from Idaho, so it's like we all have that kind of in common too. It doesn't feel like we're outsiders. And then the grief is like learning to live in the snow. I've been here for 2 years, but still just like acclimating to like snowier, colder days, and learning how to drive in that, all of that. That's the grief part for sure.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Brianna used to live in Southern California.
Yes,
So
yes, my whole life, this is still new for me. I'm learning.
So last thing, so what piece of advice would you give, either like a newly pregnant, newly postpartum mom, I guess like me, like trying to balance, athleticism, building a business, making a career change maybe because they realize what they're doing isn't serving them. What advice would you
Mhm.
give them?
I think it does come down to like practicing brave, and it's pacing yourself with those brave choices. It's taking small steps that will move the dial forward, and staying consistent with those things. I think we get like these spurts where it's like I do all this stuff, and then you like shut down and you get distracted and get consumed by other things. So I think it's like small, manageable pieces that will help move you forward. Again, thinking of it as progressive overload. Like we don't jump 10 to 20 pounds at a time. Sometimes it's jumping like 2 to 5 pounds at a time
Mm-hmm.
over
Over.
weeks and months and years. Same thing.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here.
You.
I felt like just a very easy conversation, but so many, I think hearing your story and like where you started and where your business is now is super impressive, but also like you listen to the story and I could probably list out 5 to 10 different women who have been in your shoes, right? So it's like you kind of like give us all permission that like, hey, I did this, you can do it too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you
So
so much for having me.
thank you.